Hi, everybody. Like I told you, I am out today, so I'm sorry about that. But we are starting a brand new packet, which is really exciting. I know the packet looks huge. Don't be intimidated by that. This packet, hopefully, you already put your name on the front of it as well as your block. This is going to be our last packet of the year. So I know it looks really big, but that's because it's two units combined together. It is what, unit 10 and unit 11 together. So we are going to treat it as two separate units, really, even though it's all stapled together. Just so we can say we only have one more packet. But anyway, take a look at the dates on the important board at the very bottom in the front of the room. So you put your name, you put your block on the front of your packet. I also need you to put the test date. So there's going to be Ecology Part 1 test, and that'll be on about the first half of the packet. Because like I said, it's two units, so we're going to test you on slides 1 through 36. That'll be next week on May 10th. That'll be your Part 1 ecology test. So if you want to mark that somewhere, write it down on the front of your packet that your Ecology Part 1 test is on May 10th. Please do that. And then if you haven't done so already and you want to pause the video and make sure that you have your goal, you might have done that already. Make sure you set your goal so that you know what word or topic you're really looking forward to learning more about. All right, starting on slide 1, Intro to Ecology. You should have a little bit of background on ecology now that you've watched the Amoeba Sisters, and then also all of those things that you explored last class after your benchmark. Hopefully you watched some brain pops and things along those lines so that you have a general idea that ecology is the study of really the environment, living things in the environment interacting with each other, as well as living things in the environment interacting with the non-living things, right? The abiotic factors. So starting on slide 2, take a look at that picture. I changed the wording just a little bit there because it was worded kind of funny in your packet. But what I want you to do is look at the picture and find 2 examples of living things interacting with each other or a living thing interacting with its environment. So an example would be a duck floating on water. So we have a living thing, duck, and water interacting, non-living water. That would be an example of what I'm looking for. So try to find 2 different examples of that type of thing. So pause it here, find 2 examples. All right, so hopefully you went ahead and shared with each other, talked with the people at your table about what you see here. And 2 examples that I found in this picture. In addition to the duck floating on water, we have bugs flying in the air. So bugs being living things, of course, and the air being non-living. That would be an interaction that's happening. And then I also highlighted the frog on the lily pad. So 2 living things interacting in this environment. So just getting us used to, what do ecologists do? What do they study? They study things like this, things in the picture. Let's get a definition of ecology written down on slide 3. So you're just writing the word ecology. Ecology is the study of the relationships between organisms. Remember, when we say organisms, we mean living things and their environment. Not too much else to say on this one. So hopefully you wrote down ecology. Go ahead and look at slide number 4. Ecologists study ecosystems. An ecosystem is all of the living and non-living factors that work together in a certain area. So we want to start using the correct terminology, the correct vocab. You may have noticed there's a ton of vocabulary. So we want to use the word biotic when we are talking about living things. So bio, that root word bio meaning life or living, right? Because biology is the study of living things. So biotic would be things like, in that picture, we have a fish, we have mushrooms, we have a snake, we have a tree. Abiotic, a meaning not, and bio meaning living. So abiotic, not living things in an environment or in an ecosystem. Your non-living things, as shown in the picture, would be clouds, sun, water, rocks. Air is always one that you want to think about. So when you're looking at an ecosystem, from here on out through this packet, you want to use the words biotic and abiotic. On slide 5, let's take a look at the picture here. And take a couple minutes right now, talk with the people at your table. I want you to label everything here as being either abiotic or biotic. So pause the video. And hopefully you got a chance to discuss that with everybody. Let's take a look at the answers. We have the sun being abiotic. So actually yesterday during A Day, some of the students were pausing and thinking about, well, is the sun living? Is the water living? So if you forgot, all the way back in Unit 1, we actually identified the 6 things, the 6 characteristics that make something living. So if you ever get stuck on a question like this, think about, okay, is it living? Does it reproduce? That's one of the characteristics. If it reproduces, then it is living. Does it respond to stimuli? What are some of the other things? Is it made of cells? Does it grow and develop? So those are the types of things you want to think about. If you can answer yes to those questions, that would mean it's living. But if you answer no about reproducing and cells and responding to stimuli, then it would be abiotic, right? So we have the sun is abiotic. I'll look at all the abiotic. We have clouds there, abiotic, water, sand, rock, all of those are abiotic. And then your biotic items are the bird, the fish, the crab, the butterflies, and the plants. Okay, let's pause it again here. I want to give you guys a quick little break since we're about halfway through the notes. So if your sub wants to click to the next slide, that should be your break slide, and that has your 5-minute timer. All right, starting back at slide 6. Hopefully you guys had a good break. Let's think about way back at the beginning of the year when we started learning about cells. We actually looked at the levels of cellular organization. Cellular organization starts with cells. A bunch of cells work together to make tissues. Tissues work together to make your organs. Organs work together to make your organ systems. And then finally, we stopped at all your organ systems work together to create an organism. Now we're going to go past that as we work through the remainder of these slides. We're going to look at the organization of the world at an ecological level. So the levels of organization for ecology. Look at that on the next slide, slide 7. So moving past what we looked at in the levels of organization, cellular organization, we're going to take that individual as being the smallest for ecology. One single organism would be an individual. This is a really good picture that you might want to reference back to for your homework. Hint, hint, hint. This is a good one. I might put a star on this one and the next slide. So let's take a look at 8 as well, slide 8. So slide 8 is really helpful if you want to put a big star on this. I think this is really the takeaway and what I want you to learn from this little first section, which you'll be tested on the 10th, right? So this first section on intro to ecology, you want to know what are the levels of organization in ecology, starting with that individual, moving all the way up to biosphere. So let's look at these definitions. We have an individual, which is an animal, a plant, or a single-celled life form. So one single organism would be an individual. This is what you're going to do on your homework. You're going to pick an individual, whatever the organism may be, so be creative there. And then you're going to work all the way up through the levels, all the way to biosphere. So population is our next step after individual. In a population, all of one species living in an area. So here we have multiple fish, multiple individuals together. Now make sure they're all the same species. Don't add in any extra species just yet when we're talking about a population. Move up a step, a community is a bunch of living populations. So all of the organisms living in an environment. So if you look at that picture, a bunch of jellyfish, a bunch of orange fish, a population of crab, a large grouping of grass. So all of those things together would make up a community. So in terms of a community in Brambleton, you can think of the groups of people, the populations of people interacting with the populations of birds and the populations of trees and the populations of, just think of all the living things only that make up Brambleton. That would be scientifically what a community is. Move up another level, you're looking at ecosystem. Now, ecosystem has one additional piece. Ecosystems are not only all of the living things, plants and animals, but also ecosystems are going to include the abiotic factors. So that would include, in this picture, they added water and they added a rock. So that's going to make your ecosystem. Let's think a little bit larger. A biome is a bunch of ecosystems, so large areas of Earth where similar climates and similar living organisms live. In addition to, if you look at the picture, you're also considering all of the abiotic factors. In a couple slides from now, we'll take a look at what biome we live in and what characteristics determine which ecosystems are included in that particular biome. So hold off on biome for a second. I do want you to know which biome we live in, so we'll get there. And then the very last level of organization for ecology would be your biosphere. And I really like to think of that as the world, the globe. The entire Earth would be the biospheres, if you want to write maybe Earth next to that, because it's the land, the sea, the atmosphere, all of the things, abiotic and biotic, make up your biosphere. Looking at slide number 9, let's zoom in on something called a habitat. On the next 2 slides, I wanted to compare the words habitat and niche and be pretty clear on what those things are. So a habitat you want to think of as being in an ecosystem. So an ecosystem, remember, is the living and non-living things in a particular area. And then biome is a lot more widespread, like large areas of land, like all the rainforests. All the rainforests create a rainforest biome, or all of the grasslands would be a biome. So biomes are really huge and span across continents. And again, ecosystems, just a smaller scale, I guess you could say, of a biome. So somewhere in between is a habitat. A habitat is the physical location, place, or area in which an organism lives. So think for a second, if we're looking at this little mouse here, what is his habitat? What is his home and his very specific location in this image where he lives? So we're not even thinking as big as like a forest. We're thinking more of his habitat is this little spot he likes to live on the ground, under a tree, right? So what I mean by habitat, if you look at the next slide, let's think about habitat for bees as compared to a niche. So habitat you want to think of as home, where do they very specifically live? So honeybees, or these are honeybees. On this slide, please add habitat. Write the word habitat and the bee habitat. Where do bees live? What is their home? Think to yourself, right? Honeybees live in beehives, right? So habitat for these bees would be a beehive. And now compare that to what a niche is. A niche says each living thing fills a specific role. And I even like to think of it as their job, if you want to write the word job, role/job. So their habitat is a beehive, but their job, meaning their niche, is they make honey, right? So that's the two differences. That's a difference between habitat and niche. Okay, I really like this next slide, slide 11. And I have a good question for you, but let's look at these organisms. They are all living roughly on the shoreline, right? Some of them are in the water, some of them are out of the water, but they're all living about in the same spot and the same edge of this body of water. Let's read what it says, though. The flamingos feed by straining mud through their bills. So that's what he's eating, right? He's straining through the mud to try to find food, I'm assuming. He is, the next one, the duck, is dabbling ducks feed on plants. The next bird over, we have avocets feed on insects. The next one over, we have oyster catchers pry open shells, probably oysters, to get their food. And then you have the tiny bird all the way to the right, the plovers, hunt for small insects. Okay, so they're all living on the shoreline, but they're all eating a different type of food. So what do they have in common is my question for you. Do they have the same habitat, or do they have the same niche? Think about that for a second. I want you to write that off to the side. They have the same habitat. If you were thinking habitat, they have the same habitat. What's different about these organisms is their niche. They may live in the same area, they may have the same habitat, but they all have a different job or occupation or niche. They're all eating different things. Their job is to eat plants or eat bugs or sift through the mud. Okay, so hopefully that helps a little bit, a clearer picture of the difference between habitat and niche. Almost done. We're looking at slide 12. So I told you I was going to talk about what type of biome we live in, since biome is one of the levels of organization for ecology. Look at that bottom picture first. All that green area shows you the deciduous forest biome, which is the biome that we live in. So all of these pieces of land highlighted in green all have in common, not only are they a deciduous forest, but the characteristics that make them a deciduous forest are these bullet points above. So they have 4 seasons, right? We roughly have summer, spring, winter, and fall. We have similar animals across all of these deciduous forest biomes. Bears, rabbits, woodpeckers, fox, mice, raccoons, all can be found in a deciduous forest. Plants are all very similar. Temperature ranges all fall within the same temperatures, and then average rainfall is about the same. So different types of biomes, an example would be, I think I said rainforests already, tundra, which is very cold, not a lot of shrubbery. What else? Grasslands, savannas, deserts. These are all considered biomes. And if you didn't write deciduous forest biome up towards the top, please write that on this slide. I meant to give you a line, but I did not leave space for you to write that. So please write that this is an example of a deciduous forest biome. The very last slide here, take a minute or two and pause this, work with the people at your table and see if you can label the picture and what level of organization for ecology, which ecological, if I can say ecological level of organization are each of these pictures. Okay, so hopefully you got a minute to try that out, and your answers are population for the shrimp, because they are all the same species of organism. So populations are all the same. They're all shrimp, so they all are within the same population. It wouldn't be community, because that would be additional types of populations. Other organisms would be within that picture. Okay, let's look down at the camel. We have ecosystem. So population you can eliminate, right? Because population, again, would, like the shrimp question, would be one single type of species in this image. So that one wouldn't make sense. So ecosystem, they must be trying to show different types of living organisms, different species of living organisms, as well as abiotic factors. Maybe they're including the air and the sand in this picture. The top right, we got the cow. That one's pretty easy. A single organism. Not an ecosystem. We're not looking at living and non-living things all at once. We're looking at just a single organism. And then an interacting group of various species in a common location. So various species, that would be a community. It doesn't mention anything about abiotic factors, so we can eliminate ecosystem as being correct for that bottom right one. All right, I hope that makes sense and you were able to get that all down in your note packet. We're going to pause there. Next class, we'll continue on with relationships in an ecosystem. That one's pretty interesting. But for now, let's stop there with the notes. You are going to do a formative next and start working on your homework. I will see you next class. Bye, guys.